Today, we're going to talk about spiders and scorpions and IPM. Spiders and scorpions make up one of the big four that we treat most often. Not so much scorpions, but they're starting to show themselves in a lot of areas, especially with all the construction going on. So with spiders, typically what we're looking for is one of the top 7 fears people have or phobias. And so you're going to get a lot of calls just from webs. And we want to make sure that beside the web spinners, there's a number of insects, especially a number of spiders that will hunt, and they don't even generate webs. So they could be inside crawling around and suddenly scare people. That's why it's so important for us to take care of them. The other 3 of the big 4 are the rodents, stingy insects, and ants. We take care of those 4 things, and pretty much we can knock out 90% of what we have to deal with on a regular basis. So as with anything, what we want to do more than anything right now is to go to the basics. So for service, that's going to involve inspection, treatment, and education. Every pest we deal with, we're going to talk to you from that standpoint: inspection, treatment, education. Those 3 things make up what we do for a service. So the first thing we're going to talk about is spiders. And you can see on the left-hand side, the tarantula that scares everybody. Big, hairy looking spider. Middle one is an orb weaver. And then the one to the very right, obviously, is a black widow. So first, let's start off with just a little information. Spiders are air-breathing arthropods. Arthropods meaning that they have jointed legs. They have 8 legs. They have mouth parts that have fangs that are adapted for injecting venom. They have spinnerets out of the back end of their abdomen that can generate 6 different types of silk. They're the largest order of arachnids. So they are the biggest group of the mites, the scorpions, and the spiders. They rank 7th total in species diversity. So you can imagine, with all of the different species, that the number 7 one that has the largest number is going to be spiders. So it can give you an idea of what you're dealing with. They don't have antennae. They have no extensor muscles in their limbs. So when they walk, they don't actually have muscles in their legs that move their leg outward. They have to generate pressure from inside their body and push it into that one leg to be able to generate enough of a movement of the leg. They can pull it backward, but they can't push it away. It's estimated that of the 25 million tons of spiders in the world, that they eat 400 to 800 tons of prey a year. That's a lot of food. So they form, or they produce, a very beneficial existence for us, helping us to get rid of pests in a different way. And they have 6 different types of silk glands with 6 different types of silk. Some designed to produce a web to be able to trap things. Some of it's just a guideline web to be able to extend or move from one point to another. Some may be to wrap up prey for long-term storage. There's a wide variety of the types of silk they make, and each of their spinnerets is used to create a very specific type of silk. And spiders themselves really can use, they're one of the few animals that can be able to learn from what they did and then turn around and catch prey. So one of the ways they do it, obviously, is with webs. So they'll put up spider webs and they'll catch anything that flies or crawls into it. They also can make up little lassos that will they can put a ball of a sticky material on the end, and they can fling it at an insect, catch it, and then bring it back to them to eat, which is pretty unique. They also can be able to pretend to be just like their prey. So some spiders actually can resemble flowers. And when other insects come to pollinate, that's when the spider catches them. And they can also hunt. And that basically is just running down their prey, catching it, and then dispatching it and eating it. It's sort of the same thing that centipedes do. They don't really produce any kind of traps or ways of catching them other than just running them down. And wolf spiders are probably one of the more common ones we deal with that do this. And most spiders only live for about 2 years. However, the megalomorphs, tarantulas, and other megalomorphs can actually live 25 years. So they're excellent as pets. You just can't pet them, but they're kind of cool to look at and watch. Spiders are ectotherms, meaning they cannot produce their own heat. So if there's an area that's very warm, they're going to go to a cool area. If it's very cool, then they're going to go to a warmer area. So they're going to see them moving into and out of the sun based on how much heat they need. They have setae on the outside of their bodies, the tiny hairs that allow them to sense and feel their environment. Some of them, especially the jumping spiders, can be able to see very well, but most of them just see vague images or opaque kind of pictures of us. They can't really see us directly, and they don't really see any kind of detail other than the jumping spiders. And they can be able to detect through these hairs if there's prey on a web. So you could go by and tap a web, and they would know that it's too hard of a tap for it to be an insect. They can tell when it's just an insect that's landed. Most spiders do hunt, but there's only a few that actually are, that's the only thing they can do to be able to generate their food. There are some tufts and bristles on the ends of their legs that allow them to climb up surfaces that we wouldn't suspect. And that allows them to go up glass. They can walk upside down, and it's all based on the adhesion from these tiny hairs on the end of their feet. And then they also have 8 legs, but they always keep 4 in contact with the surface. So they never rely on 2 or 3. It's always 4. So that way they can make sure that they've got good connection to wherever they are. And this is what the spider looks like inside. And you can see they, at the bottom, they actually have book lungs as opposed to the ways that other insects will breathe. So they actually take in air in this one particular area. And you can see that their body is basically just a giant open chamber. However, they do have their intestine and their stomach in the yellow. That is where they can produce that hydrostatic pressure, or hydraulic pressure, I'm sorry, that will allow their legs to move. So they're pretty fascinating animals. And on to scorpions. And what we're going to do here is talk about both of these insects in a broad case, just to give you an idea of what we're dealing with. We're not going to go to any specifics as far as identifying particular spiders, because usually people will call in having a spider problem. By the time we get there, it may be gone. So then it becomes more of a, what is a black spider, or what's a brown spider with little markings on it? Very difficult to tell the different kinds. The only way you can really, with any kind of authority, is you can get it keyed in via the eyes. So the eyes form a very specific pattern. And if you catch it, then you can be able to use that to determine, other than very specific ones like black widows that are pretty easy to be able to identify. But you usually want to see the eyes to be able to determine what kind of spider it is. Other than that, at the end of this, we're going to talk about the treatment. So right now we're getting the idea of what these insects can do so that we can set up an inspection that's going to be worth the time and produce the best results for you. So scorpions also have 8 legs. Yeah, it's not too hard to recognize them because they have those giant pinchers at the front end and a big tail with a stinger coming around their back. There's 2,500 different species, which I find incredible. They have fluorescent chemicals in their body so that you can take a UV light and you could actually find them at night. People do this out in the desert all the time. Their cephalothorax has their eyes, the top of their body where their head is. They have mouth parts, pedipalps, and the pinchers come off of this. The scorpions have 2 eyes on the top of their head and then 2 to 5 pairs of eyes along the front corners of the cephalothorax. So they don't have great vision, but they have enough to where they can be able to sense and see some prey. They're unable to form sharp images. They are pretty much light sensitive. So in fact, they're the most light sensitive and can be able to see in pretty dim lights, at least shapes and movement. And this is some general pictures of ones that are found around Nevada. Scorpions appear to have resistance to radiation. So even with radiation tests, they can find that instead of cockroaches, scorpions may last longer. They generally prey on insects, grasshoppers, crickets, termites, etc. And they will go after lizards, snakes, mammals, anything else that they need to. Several scorpion species just sit, and when the prey come by, they grab them and then they inject them. They also are arachnids, so they digest their food externally, meaning they produce a material that liquefies the internal apparatus, or if you want, the internal part of the insect or vertebrae or whatever they caught. And it allows them to basically drink their prey. Some are able to survive 6 to 12 months in between feedings, which is pretty incredible. It's basically why they survive so well in the desert. And a scorpion may molt 6 times before it becomes a fully mature scorpion. And some can live up to 25 years, which is a long time. So they make, again, great pets, just not something that you're going to want to cuddle with. So that gives you a general idea of what spiders and scorpions are made of. You have 2 distinct animals that are made to catch prey. They have great sensory organs in their hairs, very poor eyesight, but it suffices enough for them to be able to capture what they need to exist. They live a long time and can find these small nooks and crannies within a house. So how do we deal with them? And what do we need to do? First thing, as we said, part of the inspection, treatment, and education package is how do we inspect for them? So where do we inspect? What are the best places? Obviously, if they're ambush predators, then it's going to be something dark and secluded where they can be able to hide until the prey comes across. Most of the time we look at it and think about where the spider wants to sit. But in reality, perhaps it's better to think of where would their food be. So as you're going around a house, if there's light bulbs outside or some security lights, or just plain lamps that are attached to the building, then moths and other insects that the spiders would eat will be going to these and be attracted. So it's better to treat these areas to keep those moths and the food away, and then the spiders aren't going to come around. So it's going to greatly reduce what's there if we treat the areas where the prey is. So it's also a good thing to inspect there, determine specifically if the prey is going to be there, then adjacent to that will be where we're going to find the spiders. So dark areas, hiding places that are up under and protected by from the elements. So what are we going to inspect? We're going to inspect everything. So not only do you have to inspect the house itself and look at the foundation, the windows, all the various nooks and crannies, but you also have to look in the shrubs and look under the rocks and look at areas around the house, because that's where they'll also hide. And some of the key environmental needs obviously are going to be food and water, but they also need protection because there are other things out there that will eat them. So snakes, vertebrae, birds will all eat both spiders and scorpions. So when you're looking at a house, typically you're going to want to look for areas that you have two different or two areas that are joining together, any corners, anything where say a railing is attaching. These are areas that spiders can build their webs. In addition to that, places on this house such as the area underneath the porch is perfect. It's cool, it's dry. They can be able to stay up under there and hide and then come out if they want to catch prey, or they could build nests under there because other insects like the same areas. Another spot will be where the lights, the porch lights are at, because again, moths and some of the nighttime flyers will want to go to that. The front of the house under the windows where the wood meets the what appears to be cinder block. And then all of the decorative areas are perfect spots for spiders to stay at. Scorpions, you're going to be looking at more around the porch itself, especially where the leaf litter and debris are at, and anywhere that they can be able to hide in the vegetation is going to be a prime area for them. If there's a garage here, you're going to go look at that, look at the sheds. All of these areas are going to be at a minimum what you're going to be looking for. And the same thing here. So we're going to be looking for something that's going to give us what we consider conducive conditions. So these are our conditions that will help the pests to be able to survive. And usually it's going to be some type of food, water, shelter. In this case, you have all of that in abundance. Plus, because of the fruits and vegetables, you're going to have other insects here, and that's going to be allowing the spider and scorpion to feed because they have a great supply of prey that are coming around. Treatment could be liquid, dry, and non-chemical. As far as the liquid treatment, we want to first put material on the structure at least a foot to 2 feet in width around the windows, and especially on the sides of the windows and underneath. We don't necessarily have to go on top, which then will generate drops and things like that falling onto the glass of the window, which we do not want. But foundational areas, corners, gaps, any of these things would be areas where spiders like to build their nest. So you want to put that liquid out there. And again, a foot, 2 foot, minimal. Anything smaller just isn't covering enough of the area. Another liquid is going to be treating rock beds, mulch, fence lines. When we're treating this, we're not treating it for just the spiders or the scorpions. We're also treating for the prey that they're going for. Because if we take care of the prey, the spiders and scorpions are less likely to stay around. Even if they walk through, they don't find anything to eat, so they leave. That's going to help us gain control. In the meantime, hopefully they've gone through your product. So you're going to be looking at 3 to 5 gallons per house, because any of the dirt, the ground, the gravel, rocks, mulch beds, any of these kind of areas, especially within 15, 20 feet of the house, need to be treated, because that's where those ants, the spiders, all of this type, occasional invaders, everything is going to crawl out from there. And just spraying over the top doesn't give you the result. You really need to get it soaked in about 2 to 3 inches, so that any of the insects that are crawling have to crawl through that. And there's less likelihood of there being an opportunity for them to get through roots or sticks, or as vegetation grows, any kind of opportunity for them to hitch a ride as that vegetation allows them access. Dry formulations, we're going to be looking here at dusts, and at a minimum, any cracks, crevices, any dark areas that you find where there's an opening, dusted. So the corners of the houses, the framework for the garage doors, the framework for the man door on the garage, the threshold under the front door, the back sliding glass doors, the doors around the garage, any of these things have to be at a minimum treated. Another good spot to use a dust is in the cover, right at the points where it attaches for the crawl space. Spiders love to hide there because there's air movement, and they know that with air movement, they're likely to get some prey. And then non-chemical. If there's anything that we can do, trim back vegetation, reduce the amount of moisture that's around, reduce lighting directly on the structure, have it be away from the structure pointing to it. That way it's reflecting. And any of the other smaller things that we can do, such as steel wool, caulking, things like that, that all helps, especially as part of the treatment. And these are insects that, especially in the spiders, that sometimes can learn. If one thing doesn't work well for them to trap insects, they'll do something else. Some spiders will actually eat their webs to reconstitute that protein. When that happens, you might not see the web, so you wouldn't even know that a spider was there. So all of these things come into play when you've inspected, and now you're putting together your treatment. You want to make sure that you use a variety of things, liquids, dry and non-chemical, and especially communicate to the customer, which is part of the education. We have to make sure that we give good notes. What did we see? Where did we see it? When did we see it? When did they see it? All of these things have to come into play. And then what we want them to do. We want you to trim this, get rid of these bags, reduce the clutter. But we say it in a way that we say, this is going to help with the process of getting rid of the pests, not that somebody is nasty. And besides notes that we put together, we want to also make sure that verbally we're explaining to the customer. Don't go into such great detail that we're driving them crazy. What we want to do is make sure that we recognize across the board, most people just want to know you're getting rid of the problem. Part of the process for that is explaining to them in general terms how. We're going to put a liquid barrier around the fence line and in. We're going to put a liquid barrier on the house. We're also going to put some dry dust in areas that they like to sit and hide inside of voids, things like that. If the customer is available, take them with you, show them what you found. Explain to them the shrubs are covered. We treated the interior part of it, should reduce the spiders, but you're going to see some webs for a little while. Make sure that they see it and they know it, because it's going to reduce your calls. It'll also show that you're much more professional and able to take care of these problems for them. And last thing, make sure that you leave a voicemail. Even if you've already left notes, you've left a door hanger, give them a call. Just say, hey, this is Jerry, and I just want to let you know I'm done with service. Here's what I did. And that way they have at least that peace of mind of knowing, until they can read what you did, that you took care of whatever it was you needed to take care of. So with that, that's one of the 4 top ones. We already have ants, spiders, rodents and stinging insects that we know how to deal with. Now we just need to focus our attention on some of these insects, and we're going to be able to take care of all of our customers in a great way.